Hey designers, let's dive into this After Effects tutorial and create something awesome together. This tutorial is beginner friendly, so even if you're new to After Effects, you'll be able to follow along with ease. Let's not waste any time and jump right in. We'll start by creating a new composition. Once that's done, the first step is to import the background. I've downloaded this background from Pexels, and I can provide the link so you can download it too. Drag and drop it onto the timeline. Next, we'll import the comments. These are transparent comment graphics that I created randomly. Drag and drop all of them onto the timeline, placing them above the background. They're a bit small. Select the layers, press S for scale, and adjust the size until they look good. After scaling, scatter the comments across the background. Position them randomly to give the layout a more dynamic look. Once you're happy with their arrangement, we'll duplicate these comments. To duplicate, select all the comment layers and press Ctrl+D, or Command+D on Mac. Move these duplicated layers to the top of the stack and adjust their positions to avoid symmetry, ensuring a random layout. Now, let's add a slight rotation to the duplicated comments for a more natural look. Select the rotation tool, shortcut W, and start rotating each layer slightly. Tilt some comments to the right and others to the left. You don't need to go overboard, just small rotations will do. I'll go through this process step by step without fast forwarding, so you can clearly see how it's done. Take your time, adjust the positions and rotations until everything looks just right. And that's it for this part. Your scattered and rotated comments are now ready. Alright, once the comments are scattered and ready, let's take the next step by creating a null layer. Head over to the Layer menu, select New, and choose Null Object. Move the null layer all the way to the top of the timeline stack above all other layers. Select all the comment layers. To link them to the null object, grab the Pick Whip tool, the spiral icon, drag it to the null layer, and release. This will parent all the comment layers to the null object, allowing us to control them as one group. Move the playhead to the 2-second mark on the timeline and, with the null layer selected, press P to open its position settings. Click the stopwatch next to the position property to create your first keyframe. Now, go back to the first frame and drag the null layer's position all the way down. Preview your animation. Move the playhead to the 5-second mark and adjust the position of the null object so that all the comments move completely off the screen at the top. Next, let's import the falling silhouette. Drag and drop the silhouette file onto the timeline above all the layers. Select the silhouette layer, press P for position, and let's tweak it a bit. Since the silhouette is dark, we'll brighten it slightly. Go to the Effects and Presets panel, search for Invert, and apply it to the silhouette layer. In the Effect Controls panel, adjust the blend with original value to around 40 to 50%. Move the playhead to the first frame, click the stopwatch next to position, and position the silhouette at the top of the frame where it isn't visible. Next, move the playhead to the 2-second mark and adjust the silhouette's position downward so it falls visibly into the frame. Preview your animation. To add more impact, move the playhead to the 5-second mark, or wherever your null object animation ends, and drag the silhouette slightly further downward to create an extended falling motion. The comments rise, the silhouette falls, it's all coming together perfectly. At this stage, we'll add an interactive element by creating a water bubble effect. Start by creating a new shape layer. Use the ellipse tool to draw a perfect circle. Once the circle is created, align it to the center of the composition using the alignment tools in the Align panel. Give this circle a bluish color to represent the water bubble. To animate the bubble, press P for position on the shape layer. Click the stopwatch to set a keyframe at the starting position. Move the playhead to the 2-second mark, then drag the bubble downward to match the upward movement of the comments. Move the falling silhouette layer slightly upward to ensure it doesn't overlap too early with the bubble. To make the animation more realistic, the bubble should dip slightly when the silhouette touches it. Next, we need to animate the bubble's shape. Since shape layers don't have separate paths by default, we'll create one. Expand the shape layer properties, go to Ellipse Path 1, right-click, and choose Convert to Bezier Path. Now, open the Path 1 property and click the stopwatch next to Path at the exact frame where the silhouette begins to touch the bubble. Move the playhead to the frame where the silhouette has fully entered the bubble, and add another keyframe. Move the playhead back to the first keyframe and press Ctrl plus right arrow a couple of times to advance 1 or 2 frames forward. Zoom into the timeline for precision and refine the bubble's animation to ensure it reacts smoothly as the silhouette enters. Choose the Add Vertex tool, which allows you to insert additional points on the circle's path. Click on the circle's top left edge to add one point, then repeat the process on the top right edge to add another. Using the Pen tool, select the top anchor point in the middle of the circle and carefully drag it downward. This creates the dip where the falling silhouette interacts with the bubble. To ensure the animation looks natural, focus on matching the timing of the dip with the silhouette's movement. If necessary, adjust the keyframe positions to fine-tune the flow, moving the first frame slightly further apart from the second. To enhance the visual appeal of the bubble, access the layer styles for the bubble layer. Right-click on it and select Layer Styles, then choose Inner Glow. Open the Inner Glow options and change the color to white. Set the blending mode to normal initially to see how it looks. Increase the opacity to 100% so the glow becomes prominent. Adjust the size to somewhere between 200% and 300%, giving the bubble a luminous appearance. When you preview the animation, you might notice that the dip appears too deep or abrupt. To fix this, select the bubble shape layer and press U to reveal its keyframes. Find the second keyframe and adjust the top anchor point slightly upward, softening the indentation. A slight dip is usually enough to convey the interaction without looking exaggerated. To make the animation more dynamic, begin by selecting a few random comment layers and rearranging them. Move some of these selected layers above the falling silhouette layer, ensuring that the silhouette appears to pass behind certain comments while being in front of others. This layering creates depth, making the scene feel more realistic and engaging. Next, create a new solid layer. The color of this layer doesn't matter because it will serve only as a base for effects. Once the solid layer is added to the timeline, take the text tool and type the letter S. Choose a font that fits the theme of your project, and set it to have only a stroke without any fill. This minimalist design will blend well with the Saber effect that will be applied. If you don't already have the Saber plugin installed, download and install it. It's free and widely used for glowing effects. Once installed, go to the Effects and Presets panel, search for Saber, and double-click on it to apply the effect to your solid layer. In the Saber settings, locate the Customize Core section and change the core type to text layer. Then, assign the text layer, S in this case, as the core for the Saber effect. Change the Saber preset to Neon for a glowing effect, but feel free to explore other presets if they better suit your design. Reduce the glow intensity to make the glow less overpowering and change the color from pink to a vibrant red. To animate the Saber effect, locate the End Offset property in the Saber settings. Make sure the timeline indicator is at the first frame, then click the stopwatch next to End Offset and set its value to 0%. Move the timeline indicator forward by 20 frames. At the 20 frame mark, set the End Offset to 100%. If the stroke width of the text appears too thick, it can be adjusted to create a more refined look. To do this, select the text layer and reduce the stroke width. Set it to a value that works best for the design. In this case, a value of 2 looks good. After refining the stroke, select the solid layer again to preview the effect. With the adjustments, the Saber effect should now be clear and balanced. Move the timeline indicator to the 2 or 3 second mark, locate the mask evolution property and click the stopwatch next to it to enable keyframing. Move the timeline indicator to the 13 or 14 second mark, and set the mask evolution value to 5. However, after applying the Saber effect, the layers underneath the solid may become invisible because the solid layer blocks them. To fix this, change the blending mode of the solid layer. Open the blending mode drop-down for the solid layer, or press F4 if you don't see the mode options, and switch it from normal to add. This blending mode ensures that the solid layer merges seamlessly with the other elements, making everything visible again. Preview the composition. Create a new solid layer. The color of the solid layer doesn't matter since we'll be applying the Saber effect to it. Once the solid layer is created, move it below the text layer and the previously created solid layer in the timeline. With this new solid layer selected, use the rectangle tool to draw a rectangle around the S text. Ensure the rectangle fully encloses the letter. After creating the rectangle, apply the saber effect to this new solid layer. Open the Customize Core settings, change the core type from the default setting to Layer Mask. Set the preset to Neon, and adjust the color to red to match the previous saber effects. You can tweak the glow intensity and other settings to your preference for a polished look. To synchronize the animation of this solid layer with the previously made one, select the earlier solid layer and press U on your keyboard to reveal its keyframes. Highlight all the keyframes, press Ctrl+C to copy them, and then select the newly created solid layer. Move the timeline indicator to the first frame, and press Ctrl+V to paste the copied keyframes onto the new layer. Rename the layers for better navigation. Begin by renaming the solid layer where the text saber effect is applied to text saber. Select both the text layer and the text saber layer, then change their layer colors. Similarly, rename the shape layer with the saber effect to shape saber. Change the blending mode of the shape saber layer from normal to add so that the layers beneath it become visible. Select the text saber, shape saber, and text layer. Right-click and choose Pre-compose. Name this pre-composition S-text and confirm. Navigate to the project panel, where the pre-composed S-text will appear. Change the blending mode from normal to add so that the layers beneath it become visible. Duplicate this S-text by selecting it in the project panel and pressing Ctrl+D. Rename this duplicated composition to T-text. Continue duplicating, renaming the next copies as O-text and P-text respectively. This process prepares the letters needed for the word stop. Now, drag and drop the T-text composition into the timeline. Open it by double-clicking, select the S-text inside, and replace the letter S with T using the text tool. Return to the main composition. Repeat this process for the O-text and P-text compositions, replacing the letter S with O and P respectively. Once all compositions are updated, return to the main composition and drag all the pre-composed layers into the timeline. Change the blending mode for each of these layers from normal to add. Begin by selecting the T-text layer and move it next to the S-text to align them properly. Then, select the O-text layer, press P to reveal the position property, and move it next to the T-text. Do the same for the P-text layer by moving it next to the O-text. Next, focus on rotating the O-text. Select the O-text layer, use the rotation tool, and tilt it slightly. Once rotated, adjust its position accordingly. Follow the same process for the T-text layer, rotating it in the opposite direction of the O-text and adjusting its position to maintain a balanced look. Afterward, reposition the S-text to complete the alignment process. Once all the layers are properly positioned and rotated, close their properties to tidy up the workspace. Now, move on to timing the appearance of these layers. Select all of the layers, then move them to the 4-second mark in the timeline. Preview the animation to determine the exact point when the layers should become visible. It seems that the stop sign should appear when the bubble is fully visible. Move the layers to the point where the bubble is fully revealed, which could be around the 4.5-second mark. Once the layers are in position, move the timeline indicator to the 7-second frame. Press P for the position property and activate keyframe animation by clicking the stopwatch next to it. To animate their movements, go back to the starting frame of the animation and adjust the positions of the layers one by one. Start with the S-text layer. Select it and move it to the left and above the composition, placing it outside of the visible frame to make it appear from the side during the animation. Start by selecting the T-text layer and move it to the bottom left corner of the composition. Next, select the O-text layer and place it slightly towards the top right corner. For the P-text layer, move it to the right side outside the frame and position it at the bottom. This arrangement will create a dynamic effect with the letters coming from different corners of the frame. Once the positions are set, select all the keyframes for these layers and press F9 to ease the keyframes. Open the graph editor and adjust the graph to smooth out the movement and create a more fluid animation. Move the second keyframes closer to the first ones to speed up the animation. Now, select all of the pre-composed layers and right-click to pre-compose them. Name this new composition Stop and change its blending mode from normal to add. This will ensure the layers below are visible. Finally, press F4 to access the scale properties and increase the scale of the pre-composed layer to make it appear larger in the composition. If needed, press P for position and adjust the position of the pre-composed layer to ensure it's perfectly placed in the frame. Zoom out on the timeline and move the bar indicator to the point where the stop text begins to enter the frame. Once you reach that point, select the background layer, press T for opacity, and click on the stopwatch next to opacity to create a keyframe. Move the bar indicator a few frames forward, at the point where all the letters of stop are fully visible on the screen, and lower the opacity to about 5 to 10%. This will help reduce the visual crowding and make the text more prominent. Next, take the text tool, click to add new text, and make the text smaller to fit into your composition. Adjust the fill color and remove the stroke if needed. Choose a font of your choice, and change it to all caps. Align the text properly in the composition. You can also give it a black stroke, adjusting the stroke size and ensuring the fill comes before the stroke in the layer styles. For further styling, right-click on the shape layer, go to Layer Styles, and choose Stroke. In the stroke properties, increase the stroke size to your preference. You can choose a red color for the stroke, if that fits the look you're going for. After the stop text appears, the new text will be animated over it. To animate this new text, go to Effects and Presets, search for Animator Fade In, and apply it to the new text layer. Press U to see the keyframes and adjust the timing. If the text animation feels slow, move the second keyframe closer to the first one to speed it up. Now that the text animation is set, it's time to incorporate the mobile video. Import the mobile video, then drag and drop it onto the timeline. Position the video layer at the point where the text animation is complete and all the text is fully visible. Once the video is in place, press S for scale, R for rotation, and P for position. You'll animate all these properties, so click on the stopwatch next to each one to create keyframes. Move the bar indicator a few frames forward, add a blank keyframe, then go back to the first keyframe. Here, decrease the scale of the video, and make sure to enable 3D on the layer. This adds more options for rotation. Now press R for rotation again, and click the stopwatch next to the X and Y rotation properties. To view the keyframes, press U. Adjust the X and Y rotation slightly to give it a more dynamic look. Make sure the scale is set to 0 in the first keyframe, and preview the animation to check how it's looking. For the second keyframe, adjust the scale, rotation, and position values to your liking. Then, move the bar indicator about 10 frames forward to adjust the animation's progression. Decrease the scale further and adjust the rotation values again. To slow down the entire animation, select all the keyframes, press Alt, and drag them slightly to the right to stretch the timing. Now, move the bar indicator to the second frame of the mobile video. Import the social media logos, the 4 logos you're using, and drag them onto the timeline, placing them below the mobile layer. Next, press P for position, and click on the stopwatch next to position to enable keyframing. Move the bar indicator a few frames forward. Before adjusting their positions, press S for scale because these logos are likely too big. Scale them down a bit to fit better on the screen. Press U to view the keyframes for position. Adjust each logo's position individually by moving one to the top right, another to the top left, one to the bottom right, and the last one to the bottom left. This way, they'll be arranged in each corner of the frame. At the point when all the social media logos are visible in the frame, we'll remove the background elements. This includes the saber effect applied to the text, the bubble layer, and the text layer. Select all 3 of these layers and press T for opacity. Move the bar indicator to the point where the logos are still behind the mobile video. Click on the stopwatch next to opacity to create a keyframe. Now, move the bar indicator to the point where the social media logos are fully in place, and set the opacity to 0 for these layers. We also need to apply this opacity change to the falling silhouette. First, copy the opacity keyframes you just created by selecting them and pressing Ctrl+C. Then, select the falling silhouette layer, make sure the bar indicator is at the first frame of the opacity layer, and press Ctrl+V to paste the opacity keyframes here. Now, move the bar indicator a few frames forward, and at this point, increase the size of the mobile by scaling it up and adding a rotation to it. Once the mobile screen first comes forward, we want the social media icons to appear. So, trim the social media icons layer by selecting all the icons layers and pressing Alt plus left square bracket. This will ensure that they only appear at the point where the mobile screen is fully in the frame. Now, select all of the social media layers and press U to view their keyframes. Select all the keyframes, then press F9 to apply Easy Ease. Go to the graph editor and adjust the graph to make the motion smoother, just as needed for the animation. Next, press S for scale and adjust the size of the social media icons to make them smaller because they're currently too big. Select one of the social media layers, go to Effects and Presets, and search for Wiggle. Apply wiggle position to the layer and adjust the wiggle amount. Preview the animation to see if the wiggle position looks good. If it does, proceed by adding wiggle rotation to the same layer, adjusting the wiggle amount and setting the speed to about 0.7. Preview again to check if it looks perfect. Once you're satisfied, copy the wiggle effects by pressing Ctrl plus C. Now, select the remaining social media layers, one by one, and paste the wiggle effects onto each of them by pressing Ctrl plus V. This ensures that all 4 social media logos have the same animated effect. The last step is to add a text layer. Select the text tool, type in your desired text, and adjust the font size and paragraph spacing as needed. Choose your preferred font, then adjust the text size to make it fit well in the composition. To make it more noticeable, right-click on the text layer, go to Layer Style, and select Stroke. Increase the stroke size and ensure the color is set to red or your preferred choice for the stroke effect. Go to Effects and Presets, search for Blur and Fade In, and apply this preset to the text layer. Once the effect is applied, press U to see the keyframes of the text layer. Move the second keyframe closer to the first one to speed up the animation. Adjust it a bit more to make it feel right. Once you've made these adjustments, preview the animation to make sure everything flows smoothly. And that's it. Your animation is complete. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe to Ace Design for more content and creations like this.